you have anything else, doesn't matter 12 valve or anything else, you have two wires. I don't supply a micro switch just because there's so many different kits out there. Well, not kits, but configurations. That if I try to have an inventory in my garage, my whole garage be full of just various connectors of micro switches to fit various engines. But you just put a micro switch. So now you take your foot off the gas, you're regulating it in second gear or whatever, and you got 30 pounds of exhaust pressure. You give it gas, it turns off just like it's on a factory engine, like a 6.7 or a Power Stroke, whatever. Give it gas, kicks on, take your foot off the gas, kicks off. But then you're slowing down. And I monitor engine RPM. So the user, I always recommend 200 RPMs over your idle. So my truck idles at 750, my exhaust brake kickoff's 950. So once it drops down to 950, it turns the brake off. Now, a lot of these features, believe it or not, weren't really my ideas. Like I said, I put this in a 4BT. It came back from Iraq in 2010. I was completely happy the way it was. But I had one customer who was very adamant. Excuse me. He constantly called me, constantly emailed, text, and he was driving back and forth over the Cascades in Washington, Oregon. And he basically said, "Hey, Steve, the controller works great. I love it. It's way better than my regular turbo. But can you make the exhaust brake turn off with my foot?" Okay, so I fixed that. Now it does. And then he's like, "This is great. It's even better. Can you make the exhaust brake turn off when I come to a stop?" And I was like, "Oh, damn, dude, man, now you're making me learn." So I just constantly evolved based on customer input. So the customers, in my opinion, drive the development because I use it one way, they use it a different way. Their way is the way I care about, and not really my way. So now the exhaust brake works just like it does on a 6.7, except now it's a variable, and you can tell if you want more or less. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers the capabilities. It's like I said, it's IP67, which isn't the controller, it's the enclosure. The controller is reverse polarity, so you can flip the polarity on the in and out without frying it. It's surge protected, the 60 volts. It's 12 and 24 volts nominal, so you can use it overseas, or if you have a big industrial truck. Let's see here, what else? It has a cold start assist, so it closes the brake down to help it start. It has engine warm up, so it regulates the brake. That's what I forgot. There's also a wet stack prevention feature. So if anyone ever seen a generator that just idles and doesn't have a real big load on it, you wet stack the cylinders, you glaze the cylinders, and eventually the rings will no longer seat. So there's a feature on my controller that you can enable or disable if you don't want it. And it's basically the engine warm-up procedure. So you could say on a common rail you want it at 0 1 minutes because the ECU controls when it wants it, and it turns it back on to warm the engine up. And that's what actually gave me the idea, was the 5.9 common rail ECU. So now, but it applies to everything. So if you have a 12 valve, if you have a Duramax, Power Stroke, a lawnmower, whatever you want to put it on, you can say if my motor idles for more than 1 minute to a couple hours, it's all a minute, so an hour you put 60 minutes, 2 hours put 120. If it idles for X amount of time, then I want you to close that exhaust brake up. Now it'll stay on a common rail, it turns off when it gets 180 degrees, but on everything else, it'll stay on until you rev the motor up past that threshold. Now like I said, as soon as you touch the throttle, it turns it off, so you just rev your motor like you're getting in gear and you're driving, and it turns it off, and then the cycle starts over again. So if you move from like one spot to the other, and then the whole cycle, it kind of just starts over again. So you kind of have to keep in mind what you're doing. But I mean, if you're like a welder on like pipelines, work on a farm, you're constantly getting in and out of your truck, and it's constantly idling, and the engine gets cold and it's cold outside, that's actually a really good feature. So that's all the features in mind. Like I said, I really don't know too much about the BD diesel howler kit, other than I watched some of their videos. I don't agree with what they're saying for some of the stuff. Some stuff obviously I do, some stuff I don't. Like the table for the exhaust pressure, like I don't know why there's dips down. It shouldn't. It should stay 60 pounds from fourth gear locked all the way down to 20 miles an hour in second gear. So I don't know what's up with that. And their kit's obviously different technology. I personally believe the hardware in my controller is probably more advanced than 80 to 90% of all the other hardware you'll put as a modification to your truck. It's way more sophisticated. I'm not in it for money. I want to make money over time. These guys want to make money now. Not talking about BD, but just in general of a lot of shops is. I want to be a millionaire today. I'd rather sell 1 million of these controllers and sell them for $1 a piece and make $1 million that way. So it's a little different logic, and this isn't my day job, it's my hobby. My day job's the military. So yeah, so them are the features there. That off the top of my head, there's maybe a little bit more. It works with any PSI gauge sensor that's actually good. Now there's a lot of stuff like on Amazon. There's a couple companies selling gauges that are really cheap, that their sensors are not the industry standard. So the industry standard for a pressure sensor is 0.5 volts at 0 psi gauge, or 0 psi absolute, which is in a vacuum, and 4.5 volts at the maximum gauge psi. 15, 60, 100, 150. So if you use an absolute sensor, which I started doing, but I really didn't think anyone would actually go buy them, gauge sensors, because they have gauges, is what people use. But an absolute sensor basically means if you're an absolute vacuum, it's 0 psi at 0.5 volts. The atmospheric pressure of the Earth, 1 atmosphere is 14.7 psi. So obviously you'll never see that you'll never see 0 volts, or 0.5 volts on an absolute sensor. But they're great for fuel injection tuning, because you can actually measure based on that value, your potential altitude. So higher in altitude, you can give more or less fuel, whatever you need to do. Yeah, so we talked about the features. We talked about the capabilities of the controller as far as, reverse polarity protected, surge protected, all that jazz. Really, all stuff is turbos. So the BD Howler and my kit both cost $645. I was charging $750, but then I got a name brand competitor. So I evaluated what it actually cost me to make it, and I was like, I can withstand to make less money on it, and I'm happy doing that, because I got a competitor now, and that's the beauty of American capitalism. If you're the single guy, you can charge whatever you want. If you're the second guy, well, now you're competing against someone. If you're the third guy, fourth guy, 50, everyone starts getting scared, and then it's okay. Everyone starts looking at the profit margins. They drop it down to compete with each other. That's capitalism. It's bad when they all go in cahoots and they all raise their prices up and everyone pays the same amount. That's really fucked up, but some companies do that. But anyway, so let's go back. So you got the BD Howler, you got the Banshee VGT controller. I explained everything the Banshee VGT controller can do. There might be a few functions in there that I forgot. And the software. My software, like I said, is downloaded from a website. It's free, and I'm constantly updating it. If a customer finds a bug, I try to fix it within that day. When I come home from work, text, email, I see, hey, Steve, I found a bug here. It's doing something weird. I go on there, I try to replicate it, and I try to correct it. But yeah, so now let's get to the turbos. So like I said, I can control any whole set turbo, which might seem like, wow, that's so cool, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you have a 300, a 351, a 431, 441, 51, or a 541 and a 551. At the end of the day, the protocol to command it is exactly the same bytes. So if you ever look at a CAN bus, there's 8 bytes. First 2 bytes is the command, the third byte's the mode, and then you got the PGN number. They're exactly the same. Now, the other data varies a little bit, but that's easily fixable if you really wanted to. But at the end of the day, most of my customers aren't driving around with like a tablet. Oh man, is my temperature going up? Is my load too high? Like, no, man, they just fucking drive the dang thing, right? So the other data really doesn't matter. So if you wanted to, you can literally take a 551, the biggest whole set VGT, actually the 561 I think is what it is, the biggest whole set, which is like 100 plus millimeters. You can slap that right on your 6.7 and your Dodge ECU can't even tell the difference. It's like, cool, man, let's go. Won't even throw a check engine light. So the fact that someone says, hey, I can control every whole set VGT, that's really not impressive, bro. You're selling me a Delphi connector versus this connector versus a TE connector versus a Deutsch connector. Really, that's really all you're doing, is you're selling me a different connector. But the Banshee controllers can roughly around 30 different turbochargers, and they control them the same way, and they control them with the same logic. And what I mean by that is, you install my Banshee controller and you're running a whole set, and you're like, hey Steve, man, I really want to run the DPS turbinator. Well, okay, cool. If they sell you one, because right now I think they're still testing them, so if they sell you one, you can get an adapter and you can run it. If another company comes out and you're like, hey Steve, this company over here just came with the turbo, I really want to run it on my truck. Cool, man. buy the turbo. If I can't control it, send it to me. I'll do the R&D to control it for free, and I'll give you the adapter for free. So then you can use it with my kit. So I don't charge for R&D. So my goal with my kit is to be the only and true universal controller that I don't care where you're at in the world. I don't care about what turbo you want to run. The kits cost exactly the same. You just select the turbo. So right now I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different turbos on my bench. Just trying to think here. So one turbo actually counts as 2 because the Toyota Coaster uses the same actuator, different protocol. Hella actuators. There's like a million variations of these. I can control, I think, 10 various ones that I've gotten from customers. So that's what I'm saying. Like, the whole goal of the Banshee is to give you amazing logic that is on par and hopefully succeeds what the OEM provides as far as, you know, capabilities. But you're not limited to that one turbo or that one vehicle. It's like, just put on whatever you want. If you're building a custom hot rod and you know it had like a Corvette and you want to run parallel twin turbos, I'll work with you to run 2 controllers to control 2 separate turbos, and now you have 2 VNTs on that dang char. That's the goal. And I don't think BD can even come close to what I can offer as far as capabilities. But capabilities is one thing. The second thing is, how does it run on a dyno? So at the end of the day, if all their customers, like right now, I'm like I said, BD, I apologize if I'm wrong, it's just a whole set turbos. So if their whole set turbo control is phenomenal, and their customer base is just whole set turbos, like, well, who really cares if they can't control 20 other turbos if the turbo their number one market is phenomenal? So obviously, if they accept this bet that I'm making them, we're going to test a whole set turbo, because, you know, we'll find a truck that's installed the whole set turbo and all that other jazz. But yeah, like, it doesn't matter, because that's what we're competing against. They're competing in my one small niche market of the whole set turbos, and that's what I'm betting against. So let's real quick turn the camera around, see if it lets me. Well, I guess you can't flip it around while it's recording. I guess I'll do it this way. That sucks. All right. Sorry about that. All right, so obviously, all set VGTs, right? And why is that so blurry? All right, so whole set VGTs. As the unison ring comes over, it actually deflects the gas around the turbine, so it really doesn't work too well as far as spooling the turbo. It works, but there's better stuff out there. Like I was saying, so the whole set VGT, and it got a little blurry for some reason. I don't know why. Sorry, apologize for that. So the whole set VGT, like I said, the unison ring comes out. It actually deflects the gas around the turbine. If you actually hook one up the shop air or shop vac just to pressurize it, close the vane, you'll actually see the turbine will actually stall when it's fully protruding out, because it's deflecting all the gas around it. Like I said, these are hella VGTs. I can control a whole slew of these. These things are found on smaller Garretts. You got the Ford 6.0. Like I said, this is kind of popular in Australia for some reason. They like to swap these compounds on the various trucks. I'm not really sure why, but that's just what the customer wants, right? So you just kind of help them out. This is off a Hino, and it's a VNT. So this ring moves and it channels the gas over the turbine. Ugh. So I have a whole separate video on this sucker. So this is the Ford 6.0. So the Ford 6.0 is a hydraulic controlled turbo. So I'm using shop air to experiment with it, and I'm using a Duramax pressure sensor, position sensor, for the controller. So this turbo is now universal. You can put it whenever you want with the Banshee controller. Let's see what else I got. So you'll find these on BorgWarner S3 and 400s. They're actually different. This one's pulse modulation. You can tell because all the pulse modulations have a purple wire. But again, doesn't matter. Pulse modulation, CAN based. Banshee controller can control it. So this one, I'm actually looking at possibly putting on a quad. This is off the little Micro Duramax, the little 1500 equal diesel is what this turbo's off of. Same thing, if you have a tiny car, a little TDI, whatever you want, and this is the turbo you want to run, the Banshee controller can do it. Like I said, there's no limit really to what the Banshee controller can do. I kind of draw the line at stepper motors. I can control stepper motors. So like this is an Isuzu stepper motor off, I can't remember, this like a IHI I think. So what this is, it's a 3-phase stepper motor with a 3-phase encoder. I don't like to do these because A, my controller wasn't designed for it. But I mean, if you're a turbo shop, my benchtop testers, which has the same controller as a Banshee controller, just programmed differently, I can control them, and it's good for testing. You know, you'll be able to command it back and forth, you'll be able to sweep it back and forth, tell it to go to a certain position, and you can tell with 100% certainty that the actuator works on a bench before you ship it back out to the customer once you rebuild the turbo. So I mean, I can do some stuff, it's just I'm not confident enough that I can count the pulses fast enough, because you have to count them really fast, that it's good enough to use like on a car. That turbo there, like you can easily get another turbo like the Hino turbos, the BorgWarner turbos, and it's kind of like all the same, like the same size that turbo is, and you get better control. You actually get a CAN control, which is really precise, versus pulse modulation, which is it's not as precise, and generally you don't get a feedback of where the turbo's actually at. So that's what I recommend, is CAN controlled over everything else. And then the biggest turbo, which I haven't showed you guys yet, it came from South Korea. It's an Iveco off a massive motor. I want to say it's a GT4502, so it's like 100 plus millimeters on the inducer. And I got the whole set right next to it for comparison, so since I can't turn my camera around once it's recording my face, I'll kind of show you guys. And it's still blurry, and I apologize for that. So this is the whole set turbo, and this is the Iveco turbo. So you can see this is the top of the actuator. If I lay it flat, it's the unison ring pushed all the way out. The back side of the compressor housing isn't even as tall as the compressor housing. Well, the compressor here. So that thing is absolutely massive. But yeah, that's it. That's the Banshee controller. Like I said, I apologize for whatever reason my phone fell. Now it's all blurry. I don't think I can zoom in or try to clean it up. And I apologize for the long video. I think it's been about an hour. But yeah, that's it. So BD Diesel, you guys are really my only true competitor in my opinion. There's some guys out there building the Adrenos, but it's not even on the same level as mine. And I challenge you guys to see if you're even on the same level as mine as far as capabilities. And at the end of the day, capabilities are cool, but it really comes down to is, can you help the engine put more power down to the ground than my kits can? And I personally believe that my Banshee controllers will literally beat your guys' controllers wholeheartedly, whether it be performance of the engine on a dyno, driving down the road, or actual features that you offer the customer, whether it be, hey, I just bought your kit, I bought a rebuilt turbo, didn't come with the actuator, and I bought a reman turbo from reman actuator from Dodge. Can your kit calibrate it to my truck? Yes or no? The Banshee controller can. I can recalibrate the whole set turbos to the actuator to the turbo. So when it comes down to, you know, we both agree on a set of standards of, you know, features. Can you control more than one turbo? Yes or no? Can you calibrate the one turbo? So if you say, no, I can't control more than one, the turbo I can control is whole set. Okay, cool. Let's look at the whole set capabilities. Can you read the data from the whole set accurately to the customer? Yes or no? No? Cool. I win. Can you recalibrate the actuator if it's removed to the turbo? Yes or no? I can. If the actuator, because, you know, not everyone's, you know, book smart or, you know, whatever you want to call it. I've had people try to calibrate the actuator thinking it's a procedure due off the turbo. Can your kit read that data? If you calibrate a whole set turbo with a Banshee VGT controller and you don't bolt it up to a turbo, the Banshee VGT controller software will actually pop up and say calibration failed, turbo not detected. Ensure actuator is connected to the turbo. Start again. If it is connected to turbo, your actuator's trash. Yeah, you know, we disagree on set standards, you know, features. Like I said, I believe cold-heartedly that you guys can't even compete, which is why I'm willing to bet $1,000. The easiest venue for me, assuming they agree, is ATS Diesel. They have a dyno. Every year they do a big what do you call it, diesel power challenge, and it's using diesel power mag. So they're renowned within the United States. I'm assuming they're renowned with Canada. Everyone knows them, and I think that would be a fair, impartial place to do it. And I would really like to test with you guys there versus me buying one and testing it, because then, you know, it's one-sided. Or if another customer buys it and he installs it and I install mine in this truck. But I just think if we have a truck, same exact truck, you put one kit on, you test it, you put the second kit on, and you test it, and you actually show capabilities that it can and can't do. Pre-start capabilities, starting capabilities, operating capabilities, exhaust braking capabilities, and diagnostic capabilities. Something like that, and see what actually works better. Does your kit run a higher drive pressure ratio to mine where, you know, it actually is detrimental to the motor, or is it kind of close? Can the customer tune it? But if you guys are game, $1,000 to a charity. If I lose, same thing for you. If I win, same thing. I still donate $1,000 to a charity. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. People comment. If I broke the law or something like that, have your lawyer call me, and, you know, we'll talk from there. But like I said, if I spoke wrong, I apologize. Let me know where I spoke wrong, and I could put like little highlights in the video or something like that, and, you know, where it says, hey, misinformation. So this way, whoever watches the video for the total of 56 minutes, they'll know what's up. Yeah, if you lasted this long, I apologize. Thank you for watching, and yeah, have fun.